Welcome to House Hunting with Jake, name to be determined.
House hunting. I think that's already taken, Jake.
Well,
Maybe not house hunting with Jake.
House Hunting with Jake is the whole
With
time,
Jake.
the whole thing.
The whole thing. It's just one word.
Anyway, I told Ethan that I wanted to talk about, we bought a house together a few years ago. I was his realtor, and he's been living there now for a few years. And I just wanted to start talking to people that have purchased a home about the mindset of a home buyer that ended up in a successful purchase, and they've been living there for a few years, and kind of what goes into the process of I'm thinking about buying a house. What is a successful frame of mind prior to searching, during the search, and then after the search? So I think, Ethan, when we first started talking, this might have been 2021 or something like that.
Yeah.
It was during the COVID-ish years.
Yeah.
And I remember you reached out to me probably about 6 months to a year before you actually started looking, but you were thinking about looking.
Yeah.
So tell me about what was going on in your minds at that point.
Well, I mean, the big thing is making sure everybody's on the same page, and buying a house is when you go into it, it's kind of like an inconceivable purchase, right? You can't quite figure out wait, how does this work? You're looking at this big number, right? During that time, for me, anything over $100,000 was just that's an inconceivable number. I don't want to be that much in debt. I don't think anyone wants to be that much in debt. And so looking at that number and being okay, well, how does this work? No way am I going to be able to get my bank account with my minimum wage job up to that, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, amount to be able to kind of just buy a house. And so I think for me, it was probably more that journey of figuring out that number is something that you're just going to have to be paying off over a long period of time. I mean, for most people. I mean, obviously there's the people that they've been blessed that
they can buy with cash.
Yeah, just cash offer it. But I'm not that generation, right?
Are not in that position.
No. So I think that was probably the biggest mental switch, especially when you're buying a house with when you're buying a house with someone else, with also getting my wife on the same page with that as well. You might be 2 steps ahead of your wife or your husband on that track.
Sure.
But that doesn't mean that you are going to be that doesn't mean that they're going to be there just has to be that meeting of the same point for decisions to be made. And I think that was probably when we kind of got that piece kind of fitted in, and I think that piece is still clicking in some ways. It really kind of got us across that line to be okay, we need to buy a house.
Absolutely. So was buying a house something that you or for your parents on both sides did both of them owned property prior to that, right?
Yeah, both of them own property, but it's sort of one of those things when you're a kid, it's oh, we got a house, sort of thing. You don't really think through all the things. I remember my parents talking about that they were paying a mortgage payment. I'm sure my wife, it was the same way, but yeah, it's one of those strange things. It's maybe parents should talk about it more, but it was just maybe something that my parents just never really talked about much. Was that this is how the process worked. And I guess my parents was the interesting situation because my parents live in South America, and so when they bought a house, they bought it from a friend, and they kind of did this. It wasn't a loan through a bank. It was more just a handshake, and then they paid him a certain amount of money per month to kind of pay off the house. And so
an owner finance, but less so on paper.
Yes, exactly. So it was a very unique situation. And so, and I think with my wife, her parents definitely had more of, they had a more traditional sort of loan and did all that. But it was once again, I don't think things were talked about much.
Cool. As an aside, got a comment here saying that you're looking for a VA home loan sometime next year. I'd say that reach out to a realtor sooner the better. Like me and Ethan started talking about meeting, 6 months to a year out in advance. We have the ability to talk through the process in a way that would make sure that you're protected and you have a good plan for the future further out in advance than you might think. So it's better to reach out sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and that's like a mental thing, right? Because like when you're like in the process of doing something, like you're saving the money, right? You're going to be thinking like, okay, how do I like buckle down into this to be prepared when we actually find that house? It's like that's the house we want. So you've got enough for the down payment. You've got enough to kind of just go into it. And I think once again, like, yeah, I think starting that process early, kind of just being in conversation and realizing that like you might want something now, but kind of, like sit into it, that it might take a little bit longer than you think.
Yeah,
and that's okay.
absolutely. So as you were preparing, what was that moment like where you realized that both of you were okay with buying a house?
Yeah, I think it was ironically enough, it was finally my wife just kind of being like, okay, like go for it, like, okay, I trust you in this, just kind of go for it. Like she kind of got to the point of like, I really want to understand the financial um,
She
lingo.
knew that it was time, but she trusted your judgment.
Exactly. And I think that was kind of the point that we kind of got to. And like she wanted a house, like she really did. And she had a very, I think both of us kind of had like a very specific sort of house in mind when we were kind of looking for a house. But at the same time, you don't really know what it is until you actually see it. And so that was another thing.
Yeah, because I think when we first started talking, we were talking about something creative like a yurt or something like that. I mean, both of you always wanted to do something creative or live on land or something like that.
Yeah, we wanted probably an inordinate amount of property that had nothing on it, and then that we would do this sort of yurt thing. And I think it kind of sprung out of like we had done this little vacation, and we had stayed in a yurt over in Montana, and it was sort of like I was like, that's the fairy tale, is to kind of live in this house that we built ourselves, and it's round, it's unique, and it's not what anyone else would think of as a first home. So I think that was part of it.
Yeah, but I guess you find out through the process what's possible and what's not. So the fact that we had some kind of destination in mind, we just start looking for things that are possible and what doesn't work. So part of the hindrance there was the fact that there are non-financeable structures because there's not enough of them to show like what the value of the property is.
Yeah.
But yeah, so let's continue. So, but we knew that land was important to you, so we tended to focus on things that were had more space and so on, and talk through that process.
Yeah. So obviously, like, it's, I guess you could almost compare it to like, when you're young and you want to date and you want to get married to someone or something like that, you kind of have like a list in your mind of like, these are the things. And like home buying, it felt like the second dating, process, it was like, you have a list of things in your mind. You're like, okay, like for me, it was like, I wanted to have a well. I wanted to have a little bit of property. So my wife was like, I really want to get chickens eventually. I want to like plant a garden. And I was like, and I want a well because well water is delicious. And I don't want to have to pay a water bill. And and then we were also like, we don't really want a mobile, because not that there's anything wrong with mobiles, but like if you buy a mobile and it's like 50, 60 years old, it's not super, like it doesn't have the integrity. And so there was like a bunch of different things that we kind of had in our mind. And yeah, and then we were always looking online, and you'd see the one, and then it would be out of our price range, or you'd see one, and then there would be something wrong with it, or you'd see something, and then you'd go look at it, and you're like, oh, this is gonna be a lot of work. And so yeah, there was a lot in that process. But yeah, like I said, it was making that list, kind of like the second dating process.
I love that. You have to kind of go out there and look at houses to figure out what actually works for you long term and what's available in your price range. So do you remember what it was like closing in on the home that seemed right for you? We had kind of an idea of what the financial structure looked like and what the loans were available. Anything
Mm.
around the emotions and the actual like, aha, here's the house.
Yeah, so like it was actually kind of a unique situation, I think, if you remember, Jake. But like we had seen this house on online.
Hmm.
I think it was on Zillow or something, it was Willow or something like that, and we had seen it, and it had gone under contract, and we looked at it, and it was an old
Forgotten about that.
farmhouse. It had a well, and it had all these things that we were like, and it was a little bit of a fixer upper, but it was like in our price range. But we were like, it's livable, like by the pictures, but the pictures were like some of the pictures were like, but we can still do it, sort of thing. And so we kind of were like, that's the one we're looking like, that's what we're looking for. We find something like that. And I remember seeing it on there, and then it went off the market, and we were like, probably sold or something like that. And so we kind of reached out to you about that, and you were like, you're like, no, I don't think it's sold. Like, I can reach out to the person, and I was like, we were like, I mean, if you could, like, that would be cool. Like, this is sort of like, this is the house, right? We looked at some properties by this point, and we'd looked at a couple of houses like in town, and I think we looked at a couple other ones just in the area, but this was the one that was kind of like, this is the one.
Hmm.
And yeah, you reached out to the seller, and the seller was like, yeah, like, we could make a deal, but there's these things that still need to be kind of like taken care of, and they weren't things that like we cared about as much. And so it really kind of opened up this unique opportunity for us to kind of, without any competition. And if you knew anything about the time, like when we bought our house, which was around the COVID, post-ish COVID, mid-COVID, it was more mid-COVID. Um, like houses were just being snapped up off the market like crazy. Like people were getting upbid. Like things were not. Um, I mean, it was a crazy market for houses.
Hmm.
And so like we kind of went in for this house, and we basically had no competition for buying it. And so we worked it out with the buyer, and yeah, the rest is history, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a pro. I think I remember it was, now that you mentioned it, it was pending for sale.
Yeah.
And maybe it did disappear off the market, but we were able to look it up and see what the history is on the back end. And I think all I remember seeing was the pending sign that was still under
Mm,
contract. I think they had a contract that had just fallen apart.
yep.
So, which is a good reason to, if you have a pending contract, you have a house that you really like, and it's
Hmm.
pending, has a pending contract on already. It's not game over. You just need to do a little
Hmm.
bit more digging to see if it's totally sold, or if there's still a maybe or something. In this case, the deal had already fallen apart, I think, and we just reached out before they put it back on the market.
Yep.
So that's
And
great.
that was cool.
What do you think? Like in that process as a couple was helpful for you to make an ultimate decision? Like what was going through your mind at that point?
I think it was sort of like that coupling of walking through the house, that kind of, and there was that sort of like joint moment where me and my wife were like, oh yeah, like this is what we want.
Yeah.
And we were both kind of like, we kind of smiled. And I remember, this is going to sound super weird. I remember going home afterwards, and I just visited my parents down in Ecuador, and I had gotten all my Legos from when I was a kid because I wanted to have them for my kids, because we were expecting at that point. And I brought them up to the States with me, and I went home, and we'd been through the house once, and I sat down with my wife, and we we used the Legos, and we built the whole floor layout of the house from
That's amazing.
memory with Legos. and and I think it was kind of like that moment where like we could visualize ourselves living in the house. That was sort of that turning point, I think, for both of us. And like obviously, like yeah, that sounds really nerdy, but I
That's
guess kind of like
incredible.
a millennial thing, right? Legos.
My kids are super into Legos right now.
Oh yeah.
It's often the cause of most of the fights in our house at the moment. So
No. Yeah. Legos are OP, man. They're amazing. Yeah.
they are amazing. That's great. Okay, so after we make an offer on the house,
Mm,
um, we were able to snag it up during a really hot market.
yeah.
And so then we close on the house. It's now it's been a few years. Can you kind of talk about what you feel like as a homeowner? What's been a helpful mentality? Obviously things come up when you own a home. No house is perfect. What
Yeah.
sort of things go through your mind when you're thinking through this is the responsibility of a homeowner and this keeps me encouraged?
Once again, it's sort of that mentality of like you're like and it really depends on like what your goal is of owning a home. Like right, some people want to be like live in a home for a couple of years and sell it and get the next best thing. But I guess in Leanna or my wife and my mind, like we kind of had this idea of like we just want we and it's hard because you kind of fight this feeling of like is like we want everything done all at once, right? We want the new windows, we want the new doors, we want the lawn to be perfect, we want the sprinkler system in, we want another hose outlet put in on our house. And so it's kind of fighting that feeling and being like, no, like we're in this for the long haul. um, we're not going to get everything done in the first year. And it's so easy to look at that homeowner who's owned their house for 15, 20 years and be like, man, like they've got the nice windows, they've got the new carpet, they've got the new flooring, and they got all their walls painted. And we're like, man, we only got our like one wall painted, and and we're still working on the drywall, and our yard is kind of patchy. We got some brown spots still, and really, it's switching that mentality of like, no, like this is the long haul. Like we've only been here, I think what is it? It's probably like four years now. We've been in the house a little over 4 years, and so it's like we've been here for just this short amount of time. It's okay if not everything's done,
Yeah.
and kind of being okay with like things are going to be half done, and try not to get given to those feelings of like, oh, I just want everything to be perfect.
Yeah,
But
your house
still,
is still, as you're working on things, your house is still gaining value by the nature of the market.
mhm,
And then what they've actually done is some really amazing garden work. I mean, they have about an acre, I think,
mhm,
if I'm
yeah,
right. So the fact that you have fruit trees and you've been adding a lot to the functionality of the space on the outside, and the inside looks better and better every time I go over.
mhm,
You are like it is a equity increase, even though we think you have to like there's two different categories here where there's equity and then there's lifestyle, right?
exactly.
Where the equity we have to know that it's doing its job
Mhm,
and then be patient with the things that for our lifestyle it'd be nice if these things were finished. But
exactly.
meanwhile it's still a good asset that's working for you guys while you're sleeping, which is great.
Exactly. And like yeah, like there's some great things. There's some things that were more stressful. Like we just went through a replacing of our septic um,
Mm.
tank this last week, and like that was hard. But at the same time, we got to make the decisions on like how what we wanted and how we want it done, and where things got directed. And so there's like that plus side as well, where you do have a level of control, but then you have to pay for it as well, which is not as fun. But at the same time, like this year, I think we grew pickles in our backyard, and so we were able to make. I think we did 98, 96. My wife is probably going to correct me if she sees this. Jars of pickles. So we almost hit 100 yards of jars of pickles that we were able to pickle this year out of produce from our yard. And I think we had some produce from my father-in-law's yard as well because he did some pickles as well. But things like that where like those are kind of the things that you look and you're like these are the things like lifestyle things, right, that you're talking about that you want to get done. And then you yeah you're kind of given that freedom to do it. Where if you're renting, you kind of have to ask
Yep.
your landlord, like, hey, can I plant a garden in the yard? Can I tear up the lawn? Um, and um, and then sometimes they say yes, and sometimes they say no. So, yeah.
Right. That's great, man. Anything that you would add to somebody that's thinking about buying a house in the next year or two? What would you tell them?
Yeah, I guess when it comes down to it, like, yeah, when you look at that big number, obviously, like, it's nice to have that big number less big, right? But when you're looking for the house, like, having the house that you know that you can visualize yourself in, and that you can see yourself like raising a family in, uh, that that becomes more important. That kind of becomes the more important thing. There's also the level of, like, yeah, buy a house that's to your skill level of what you can do, right? I'm pretty good at chopping up dirt, so making a garden in our backyard's okay. My drywall abilities are probably lacking, as some of my excellent contractor um, drywall contract friends will tell me. They're like, yeah, that wall's pretty crooked. I'm like, well, I did it myself, and I didn't have to pay someone else to do it. But yeah, I guess just being fine with those things. And so as you're looking for a house, yeah, something you can visualize your family in, something that fits your budget. Like, you don't want to break the bank. You don't want to all of a sudden kind of put yourself in a situation that's just not going to work for you. And yeah, I don't know. I think those are probably the two biggest things when it comes to buying a house.
Awesome. Cool, man. Well, I appreciate you jumping on and chat with me for a bit. And yeah, we'll go from there. If you have any questions about buying or selling real estate, definitely reach out to me. Give me a text or a call at 509-995-4229, or click the link below, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks, Ethan.
Yeah, thank you.